Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange. This is Hugh Beloo, founder and president of Center Vision Leadership Foundation, where leaders create synergy with the clarity of their vision. And wow, do I have an interesting guest today, an expert on setting up and empowering nonprofit leaders to fully accomplish their mission. And we're going to focus in on a specific area. So, our title today is The Strangest Secret of Volunteer Management. So, come on, bring it on.
I told you I read self-help books growing up. So, so the strangest secret of volunteer management. So, our company's entire philosophy is that if nonprofits get really serious about the impact that they actually create, then the money and the team and everything works. If they don't get really serious about it, then it doesn't. So we started on impact, and I really like that we started there. And that's necessary for volunteers too. Volunteers will join your organization because they like you, but volunteers will not stay in your organization because they like you. Volunteers will stay in your organization because A, they believe in your vision and where you're going, and B, they see the specific part of that vision that they are a part of, that they actually can own themselves. So the strangest secret of volunteer management is something that I found out the hard way. So in 2012, I was a college student. I was a freshman, and I was looking at something on the internet, and I was using a tool called StumbleUpon. Anybody my age knows what StumbleUpon is. It sent you to random places on the internet when you were bored and avoiding homework. And man, was I bored and avoiding homework. And I came across a video that talked about the Japanese American detention in 1942 and a new piece of legislation that had come up and was being signed by the president at the time that instituted the same kind of powers. And I got, pretty upset about that. And I started researching it, researched it for about 3 months and kicked off my nonprofit. And when I started my nonprofit organization to take that on, we were Panda, or People Against the NDAA, which is also an acronym. So it's like an acronym inside an acronym and inside an acronym. But when I started this organization, I had in mind a very militaristic like structure. So we're going to have chapters and teams, and people are going to report to each other and all that jazz. And we had 35 chapters out of the gate. So I'm running this from my dorm room in Bowling Green, Ohio. And we have 35 chapters start up around the country within the first year. And I learned very quickly that when you're dealing with volunteers, and I didn't have the luxury of having people near me, these are all remote. This is before Zoom, so it's all conference calls. And when you're trying to manage volunteers from a distance, you have to get really good at managing volunteers. And the first wave of my militaristic approach did not work, and most of those chapters folded by the end of that first year. And I really dug deep into how on earth can I run a volunteer organization really well. And what I ended up learning was that volunteers get paid too. That it's not just your employees, it's not just your staff, but that volunteers are not just there because they're happy-go-lucky and believe in what you're doing and it's all cool. But volunteers get paid too. And discovering the three different volunteer paychecks was the strangest secret of volunteer management that I learned and transformed my organization from 35 odd chapters that eventually fell apart to 10,000 volunteers operating in almost 50 states around the country, with several of our quote unquote chapters. We ended up calling them teams because I'm a big fan of renaming things when I don't like the name. We had several of those teams outlast the life of the national organization and continue doing that work in their states and in their cities. So it taught me a lot about, and learning that secret and those three paychecks taught me a lot about managing volunteers.
So, Dan, what do you want to leave people with today?
I think the message that I want to give people today is if you are looking to build a sustainable organization, you've got to take good care of your volunteers. And those volunteers, they are investing in something and they need to see the return. And you need to make sure that you're giving them that return so that your organization, I mean, we weren't able to get to 10K volunteers overnight, but the reason why your volunteers decide that they're going to go to a spaghetti dinner or decide that they're going to volunteer for another organization or decide they're going to play with their kids and do something else with their time is because you haven't made that valuable enough to be with you. And if you do that, your volunteer program will take off.
Dan Johnson, it's been refreshing and informative having you here today. Thanks for energizing our show with your presence and your knowledge.